Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Grand Page. I am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost. Today I want to talk about something that just kind of popped in my head randomly. It's always been something that kind of bothered me, and I've developed it in my head over the years. And I have this YouTube channel that I'm very interested in expanding and working on putting videos out there, and so I think it's finally a good opportunity for me to finally talk about it. Bottom line up front, I want to talk about the so-called finale to the Batman Beyond story. That actually happened in the Justice League Unlimited episode called EPILOGUE. And sort of my critique on it. I'm going to have a bit of a hot take here, so just a little bit of a heads up. Before I get into all of that, I'll give you sort of my history with a lot of the DC animated universe, the background on Batman Beyond and what happened with it and why they had to do this epilogue episode, and then I'll get into my critique proper of it. But I essentially grew up with the DC animated universe. I was a child from Batman the Animated Series all the way up to Justice League Unlimited. If I'm not mistaken, could be wrong on this, because it was around the time Justice League Unlimited ended, where I was getting into high school, or not getting into, but I was leaving high school, and I was about to become an adult and everything. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Justice League Unlimited was the last show of the DC animated universe. They've done a few movies here and there still that are technically considered canon, but I'm pretty sure Justice League Unlimited was the end of the show, at least, or the end of the animated universe. But I grew up on this entire universe from day one, Batman the Animated Series, going into Superman, and then going into Batman Beyond, going into the two Justice Leagues. I absolutely love this franchise. It's absolutely fantastic. I recommend it for kids. I recommend it for adults. I recommend it for everybody and everyone in between. It's fantastic. It's aged like fine wine. I really can't get enough of it, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So it's really, really, really good. Very well put together. This team of Bruce Timm and I know there's one more, Eric Radomski, I think. I could be mistaken on that. Paul Dini had a hand in a lot of the work too. Just all around, very, very well put together shows, all of them. And Andrea Romano was the voice actor, caster, voice director sort of person. All really, really important, not just in the DC animated universe shows, but also in those direct-to-DVD DC animated movies, which are also fantastic. So I'll probably do more videos on a lot of that stuff in the coming months and years. But overall, I really recommend DC Animated Universe, and I recommend a lot of what all these people worked on. More specifically, getting into things like Batman Beyond and Justice League Unlimited. I have a very particular memory of Batman Beyond. When it was still running, I actually had a cassette tape, not even a CD. I had a cassette tape of the soundtrack of Batman Beyond, and I remember it too so distinctly because I had a family member who really hated that I had it, because it had this rock music, and it was very edgy for the time and all that sort of thing. That's not really why I listened to it. I just listened to it because I really liked intro theme songs from all of my different shows and everything. It really had nothing to do with it being rock, but that intro still hits hard today. That is a really, really cool intro for a Batman show. But to get into this talk, specifically Epilogue, how it relates to Batman Beyond and all that, So there's a bit of tension between the shows of Batman Beyond and Justice League. I don't remember exactly why it happened, but I know that Batman Beyond essentially got canceled after its third season. I think there's still speculation on why it got canceled. It could be because it wasn't getting the viewings that they wanted. It could be that there was this sort of weird thing of ownership in where it was going to air between Kids WB and Cartoon Network. Once Justice League came along, all of those superhero cartoons for DC all moved over to Cartoon Network, but it was still like some of them were still owned by Kids WB. It was really, really strange. And I don't know the exact history around it, but I do know, bottom line facts, that Batman Beyond Season 3 got canceled, and then shortly after that, the same team from Batman Beyond, Batman the Animated Series, Superman, all moved over to Cartoon Network to do Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And the Season 3 cancellation, Season 3 didn't end on a kind of finale to the series. Things didn't round out. I don't know if there were any plot holes left over or any sort of loose strings left unpulled, that sort of thing. But I do know that for a lot of fans, there was a sort of gap of how does the series end. And so that's sort of what's going on there. And then Justice League Unlimited happens, where Justice League Unlimited expands the roster extensively. I think the only show that's ever done a more extensive roster might be Batman Brave and the Bold. Again, could be wrong on that, but Batman Brave and the Bold, Justice League Unlimited, did a really good job of expanding the roster of heroes and villains, actually, too. And really showing these characters, these other characters that people might not be as familiar with. And Justice League Unlimited was a good opportunity to show Batman Beyond, because he's part of the same universe, without necessarily focusing on him, save for one particular episode, and that was Epilogue. So they must have known or heard, or even maybe they just wanted to do it personally, but they found it necessary to give a kind of official ending to the Batman Beyond franchise, that specifically. And for those of you that aren't aware of this epilogue episode, I will go ahead and let you know I'm going to spoil it for you. So this is your chance to click away if you don't want to see it. But epilogue was sort of this way to not just round things off for the Batman Beyond series, but it also kind of decided to explain things that really didn't need explaining. Because as it turns out, according to the episode Epilogue, Terry McGinnis did not actually choose to be Batman. He was genetically, he had a genetic sort of presupposition to become Batman, because Terry's father was genetically altered, so that way he was basically Bruce Wayne, and so then him being with Terry's mother would create a sort of half Bruce Wayne, half Terry's mother child, rather than Terry's mother, Terry's father. And so he's genetically presupposed to becoming Batman because of this. And this is all orchestrated by a character by Amanda Waller. She calls it the project is called Batman Beyond, where she's like, what happens when Batman gets old? How are we going to protect people? That sort of thing. And so she comes up with Batman Beyond, trying to create the same traumatic event for Terry to encourage him to be Batman and all this other stuff. So let me get into the reasons why I actually like it first, because it's actually not all bad. Narratively speaking, thematically speaking, it's all good, right? It all makes sense for the world. It's not what's the word? It makes sense, right? It makes sense within the world, and to be fair, it also has been very well received by fans, right? Like people who enjoy the DC animated universe. They feel like they missed out with an official finale for Batman Beyond. They get this episode epilogue. A lot of people are actually really, really happy with this ending, and I'm not trying to ruin that for you. I also personally like, this hasn't really been talked about as much. I really like the character development of Amanda Waller here, because in the Justice League show and Justice League Unlimited, she's actually a major antagonist for the heroes, and to see her actually not just be on their side but also try to continue their legacy is a really interesting character development for this particular episode. But what I really, really don't like about this is it does change the context of Terry and why he chooses to be Batman. Because now, instead of it being an active choice, he is genetically designed to just be Batman. Like, it's almost like he doesn't have a choice anymore. And I personally really don't like that, because that essentially takes away his agency as a character. I also feel like it rewrites a previous reasoning for why he chose to be Batman. So there's actually two reasons why. If you go back to the opening episodes, it was either 2 parts or 3-part episode of it's called Rebirth, where Terry McGinnis actually takes on the mantle of Batman. And he does it because his father is killed. And so, very sort of interesting opening to the show, good motivator for why he starts becoming Batman. And then Bruce Wayne is impressed by him, and he decides to take Terry on to continue crime fighting, because very clearly things haven't gotten better in Gotham City. So that's reason number one. And then if you've watched Batman Return of the Joker, that movie, which does occur at least in the middle of the running of the Batman Beyond series. Like, it doesn't happen, like, at the end after season 3 is done and over with. It happens, I think, between, like, seasons 1 and 2 or something like that. But there's a very, very important moment for Terry's character in that movie where Batman's trying to get him to give up being Batman because Bruce Wayne is scared for Terry to fight the Joker. And Terry tells him that he's not going to give up being Batman, because it's not just about, living up to the mantle of Batman or anything like that. And he's not like one of Bruce Wayne's sidekicks or anything that he pulled off the street. He views it as a kind of penance for him being a troubled kid himself. If you remember that first episode or so of Terry McGinnis, he's kind of a bit of a bully in high school. He's a rough kid. He helps out people here and there, but a lot of it is lacking prudence, knowing when and how far to go with things and stuff like that. Pretty rough kid. He even says himself that he might have ended up as like one of those henchmen that Batman would have like knocked out back in the day, sort of thing. And so him being Batman goes from seeking vengeance for the murder of his father and goes into penance for the trouble that he caused as a kid growing up. And I feel like that's so much more interesting as a character because it's so different from a lot of the other characters, particularly in Batman's circle, right? The other sidekicks, Batman himself, all that. Terry says that I made mistakes growing up and I want to make up for them. But then you get this episode called Epilogue, and it turns out he didn't necessarily have a choice. He was genetically designed to be Batman, and so he was just always going to be Batman. So I personally never found that very interesting. I didn't need that explained or spelled out or anything. Again, I'm not trying to take away anything from the team who put it together. Again, narratively, it all makes sense. It's thematically coherent. I love Amanda Waller's character development from it. All that's really, really interesting. I just feel like it erases previously established lore and character development that I feel like is much more interesting than what occurs in Epilogue. So you can fight about it with me in the comments, or you can share this and laugh at me with your other friends. But I really feel like Epilogue wasn't really necessary because we had a good explanation already for why Terry McGinnis was Batman. With all of that being said, I am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost.